Okay, we can go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us tonight for Tempe Tomorrow General Plan 2050 public meeting. We will have a short 15-minute presentation by Long Range Planner Zambika and Jacob. Then after that, we'll open it up for Q&A. So I will turn it over to Ambika. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. My name is Ambika Adhikari, Principal Planner in the Community Development Long Range. And then with me are Brenda, Jacob, and a few other staff. Thanks so much for making time. We began this project exactly 1 year ago in March 2022 officially. And then we have had dozens and dozens of meetings if we count all the boards and commission and public meetings and focus group meetings and the meetings that we have been to. So today we had this public meeting at noon, exactly the same meeting. And this is the second meeting, so we appreciate your time. And then we'll quickly go over some of the slides, and then at the end, there will be a discussion opportunity. So today we'll once again cover, I know many of you have already heard, but I saw at least one or two new names. We'll very briefly talk about what is a general plan, and we're calling it Tempe Tomorrow General Plan 2050 officially. I will describe how it is being developed. And then we'll also talk very briefly about what we've heard so far in all these public meetings. And then we'll show you how the draft is being developed. How does the table of content look like? And then we'll review land use maps scenario. There will be 3 scenarios that Jacob will present. That is actually going to be the crux of today's meeting. Okay, so general plan is the basic guiding document for the city in terms of physical development. It is pretty much like a constitution of the city in terms of physical development. It guides the infrastructure plans like water and transportation. And then it also, the other high-level implementing plans like the character area plans, forestry master plan also follow from the vision of the general plan. Then come a lot of implementation plan that we developed, like redevelopment plan, development guidelines, development plans, and specific plans. And then finally, the regulatory elements that actually implement the plan through zoning, design standards, engineering codes, and so on. So that's the schema of how the general plan sits on top. Okay, this is a little hard to read, but I just wanted to give you a total of 2 years of window for this general plan in the making. We've completed 1 year. We still have another year to go before it actually goes for voting. So we've had several meetings that you can see on that timeline. And then today on March, we are doing this public meeting, and then we'll discuss about what are the next steps and how do we take it to our adoption process towards the end of this presentation. Next one. Okay, so how is the plan being developed? Very briefly, there are lots of bullet points out here, but basically we do look into the previous general plan. And we take a lot of guidance from the council and the other appointed community commissions and boards. There's one specific commission and board, which is specifically for the Tempe Tomorrow General Plan 2050. It's called the Community Working Group, 17 members. Every Tuesday, we've been meeting at the library for the last several months, and we'll still have a few more meetings to review and complete all the different chapters and elements. We also have a pretty large technical advisory group, which goes into a lot more detail. We meet twice a month. It has almost 70 members, includes staff, representative from the boards and commissions, and also our partners like ASU and Downtown Tempe Authority. And then we hear from you. Basically, it's a community-driven plan. And we also come to many of the meetings we are invited to. We hold public meetings and open house like we are doing today. And then we also reach out to the specialized groups, and based on all of that, we begin to craft the plan. Next one. So the draft content, very briefly, is what we've heard. We've heard thousands of different points and data points, but in all the different meetings, basically, there are many, many common themes that people have been presenting to us. And here are some of the list of some of the common elements people are definitely interested about: access and proximity to amenities, accessibility to transit and housing and other areas, and then also the housing typology, on how people are interested in the healthy regions, these days it's called the blue zones. If you Google, you'll see the blue zones. There are 4 or 5 across the globe where people live longer and live healthy life. And there are many criteria for that. We're trying to follow some of those things. We also look at the trend, the national trend that's going on in planning. And then many things that we hear from people on renewable energy, state equity, walkability, affordable housing, and a lot of things that we've heard. So it's just some of the elements that we have tabulated. Next one. And then with all that feedback, we go into the initial draft of the 2040 and we begin to revise and plan. And we've been taking each one of the elements and each one of the chapters to the community working group and also to the technical advisory groups and also to the public. So right now we've begun to draft the plan, which will be released early May. Actually, we'll go to the council also with some kind of draft, but officially it will be released in early May. The one on the right side, the cover page, that's what we're proposing. It will have 7 chapters: intro, land use, economic development, circulation, and so on. Each one of the chapters have elements of the plan that are either required by the Arizona state statute or something that Tempe feels very important and we add. So on the in the 7 chapters, there will be 20 Arizona mandated elements, things like water resources, land use, all those things are mandated. And then we also have 6 additional elements like historic preservation and the cultural amenities that we include in the plan. Next one. Okay, so with that, I'm going to invite my colleague, Jacob Payne, who has been with us, where we are all in the team from the beginning. He's going to review the public input to date and also look for your feedback into the mapping and other criteria. To you, Jacob.
Thank you, Ambika. So as Ambika said, I'm Jacob Payne. I'm a planner here with the City of Tempe Community Development Department. So first, I'm going to go over some of our past outreach efforts and a little bit of what we've heard so far, and then we'll move into the general plan land use maps. So as Ambika mentioned, we started this process over a year ago. So we had our first kickoff survey that was last summer. It's 10 questions that we asked people about their values and preferences for the community, what they think about Tempe's future. We did that with a combination of open-ended aspirational type questions and then also some ranking of your priorities for Tempe's future. So there was 356 respondents to that survey. Following that, we had our first public workshop, which we held at the Legoland Discovery Center at the Arizona Mills Mall. We wanted to host something engaging and interactive for people to participate in. So we had a consultant come and help us out with an activity. It was based around Legos and other small household objects. And participants got to build models of their ideal Tempe and then converse with each other and share ideas about the common themes that they think make a good city, a good community. And we compiled all that information and helped us with our draft writing. So that was a pretty well-attended event. We had 153 attendees, and running concurrently with that, we had our second online survey, which got 115 responses. And then back in this January of this year, we had our second public meeting. It was a hybrid format. So there in the daytime, we did a virtual component over Zoom, like what we're doing right now. And then in the evening, we held an in-person open house style, where we had staff members standing at different tables relevant to different chapters of the general plan. So residents and community members could come and ask the questions that they had about the general plan and about the process and what's going to be in it. During that time, we also had our third online survey open, which was our most well-received survey. We got 420 responses on that survey. Just this last month, we held a pair of meetings to get input from our nonprofit groups and our business communities. So both of these were over Zoom. Also, we focused on specific elements of the general plan that were pertinent to these groups. So for example, historic preservation was a nonprofit group topic, economic development for business community, so on. And there we go. And last 2 weeks ago, we held another public meeting with the Apache ASL Trails community. It's a residential community for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. So with the help of some sign language interpreters, we conducted a dotocracy. which is essentially a type of voting where you place stickers under priorities. And it's a way to, show where consensus lies with a group of people and to spark discussion about a certain topic. So with that, I'm going to move into our land use and density map drafts. Ambika mentioned that this is a big component of the general plan. It's the portion of the document that is probably looked at and used the most often. So it's really important that we get some feedback about this. So that's why we're having this meeting with a big emphasis on these maps. So general plan land use designation. It is a designation of what land uses are expected to occupy certain areas over the course of 30 years. So a land use designation doesn't necessarily mean that a land use is changing immediately, but rather that it's saying that it's likely or desirable that that land will change use sometime over the next 30 years, which is, the lifetime of this document. We're looking out to 2050. So land use is not zoning and it does not change zoning, but it does inform zoning changes for the future. So for example, a property could be zoned residential and designated mixed use, but continue to be residentially zoned pretty much indefinitely. If somebody came along with that property and wanted to redevelop to a mixed use project, the zoning change to mixed use would be supported by the general plan, and that would be something that's considered during the public hearing process. So in our currently approved general plan 2040, land use and density were drawn out in 2 maps, and that's what's shown on this slide. On the left side, you can see the land use map, which has designations like residential, commercial, mixed use, industrial, open space, the typical things that you think of when you imagine land use. The map on the right is showing residential density. In 2040, there was a range from low density, which is 3 or less dwelling units per acre, all the way up to high density urban core, which is up to and over 65 dwelling units per acre. You'll also notice on the density map that there are areas shown in red. Those are what's known as cultural resource area. So cultural resource area is something that was created back in the general plan 2030. So the general plan before this, and we've been keeping it along with every general plan update. So this designation is for neighborhoods with some historic value that we would want to protect from increased density. So these cultural resource designations don't have a density limit per se. It's what's limited by the density or by the zoning. So it's limited to the zoning as it was in 2003. So whatever the zoning was in 2003 on that property is where the cap of the density is allowed in a cultural resource area. For Tempe tomorrow, General Plan 2050, we will be combining these 2 maps, the land use and the residential density map. This is going to make it easier to read, easier to interpret. This slide is showing what the 2040 maps look like combined. So this is just a representation of what those 2 maps in the previous slide would look like if they were combined. Having one map is conventional. All the other cities in the valley do it. Tempe was the only one that had 2. And in thinking about it with this general plan update, we feel that this is more convenient, easier to understand for residents, for developers, pretty much everybody who's involved with this map. So we have made 3 land use map scenarios that we'll get input on, and I'm going to show them to you on the following slide. But first, I wanted to cover the land use types that you'll see on the map. So as I mentioned previously, since land use and density are now combined, the land uses are shown here with the densities beneath them for the ones that do allow residential density. So for starters, on the top, we have the cultural resource designation, which I had mentioned previously with the limited density as allowed by zoning. Then we have 2 single family land use types, which are the large lot up to 3 dwelling units per acre and the single family up to 9 dwelling units per acre. Then 2 multifamily designations, which are up to 45 dwelling units, or I'm sorry, up to 25 dwelling units per acre and up to 45 dwelling units per acre. Then there are the 5 mixed use categories. The first 3 are the typical mixed use that you think of, where residential and commercial are encouraged to be mingled on the site. So those categories are up to 45 dwelling units per acre, up to 65 dwelling units per acre, and then the urban, which does not have a density cap, which would be the equivalent of the high density urban core from General Plan 2040. The other 2 are the mixed use industrial. This is a relatively new land use category. It was added to the General Plan 2040 back in 2019 with an amendment for the Tempe Maker District and Smith Innovation Hubs. These areas were identified as potential for new redevelopment where mixed use projects maybe have a light industrial component to them. So there's two categories of that land use where one is up to 25 dwelling units per acre and the other is up to 45 dwelling units per acre. The rest of the categories, pretty standard, the industrial, commercial, civic, educational, open space, and recreational. So with that, here are the three scenarios that we've mentioned. I'm going to give a brief explanation for each of them. And then once we wrap up the presentation, we're going to send a link to these maps so you can have them viewable. And I'm also going to pull them back up so we can zoom around and look at specific areas if anybody wants to look at something. But for starters, the scenario one, I'll begin there. So in this scenario, land use changes are focused on areas along the transit corridors and expansions of mixed use in areas where it was already present. So working out adjacent to areas that are already mixed use. And also increased density along the Apache light rail corridor. Some changes in this scenario are common to all three. So I'm going to go ahead and mention some of the changes that you'll see on all three scenarios as well. The first of which is that the Arizona Mills Mall and the Emerald Center, where IKEA is located, have been identified as mixed use as an opportunity for redevelopment or new development at those sites. The cultural resource area has been expanded near Mitchell Park to include a neighborhood which was previously already surrounded by cultural resource, so adding it to that designation as well. And then also common to all three is along McClintock Drive north of the 202, that area being designated as mixed use industrial. Moving on to scenario two, it builds upon the changes from scenario one. So everything that's done in scenario one follows through to scenario two, with the addition of more increases in density and additional mixed use a little bit further away from transit corridors and in places along major arterials in the city. And then scenario three then again builds from scenario two, incorporating more mixed use and older commercial centers, and again on the major arterials. So as I mentioned, once we finish up here, I can bring this back up and we'll send a link out to you so you can have a look at it as well. So next steps in our process. So we have a fourth survey that's available now. It opened up today and it'll go through April 9th. So this survey shows the maps that I presented to you here, and it asks you for input about what you like, things you might dislike, and ultimately like what would your preference be for the map. It also asks you some more general questions about the general plan and what priorities you think that it should have. And then following that, the next thing that we'll be doing is going to the city council for a work study session to present them a draft version of the plan. And then once we do that, after there will be a community meeting to do draft review. There will be more information to that to come, but it'll be early May. And then the last leg of our process is coming up soon, and that's when we'll head to the Development Review Commission on June 27th and July 25th, before finally going to City Council for their approval in August. Once that is done, then the plan will be on the ballot for March of 2024. So with that, we'll wrap up and we'll leave it open to questions or comments if you have any.
And since we're a smaller group today, feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to, if you have any questions, or you can also type them in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and include the link for this map with these land use scenarios, so you can click on them and kind of view them bigger if you'd like to. Looks like we have a question here. Let's see. Dina Demera asked, you show residential density. Is there anything to distinguish between ownership versus rental?
Thank you for the question, Dina. No, since these are just distinguishing land use, there would be no way to have a difference between ownership and rental. The land use doesn't, it's just residential. it'll be single family or multifamily, and it'll have a density, but there's no attributes that would do ownership.
Yeah, just to add to what Jacob said, the maps do not show the ownership versus rental, but the general plan does have policies depending on the areas to encourage ownership in some areas and also encourage the building of rental in the other, and also maintain some kind of balance so that those different types of housing are available. Like, for example, around ASU, there are a lot of students and temporary people who would like for rental. So those are some of the things that in the housing element in the general plan, we discuss a little bit, but the maps that you see right now are just pure residential density.
Okay, excellent, thank you, good question. Let's see. So as I was sharing before, the link that I put in is for the scenarios. This is also included on the survey that is at tempe.gov/forum. That'll be open for the next couple of weeks, and at multiple points in the survey, this link is provided so people can click on it and you won't lose your space. You're able to click on it, goes to a new page, and then you can go back to the survey.
And also, I know that it's hard to read these maps. We can blow it up some portions if you want. But when you go to the survey, you can really expand the way that you want and look at it in the detail. And if you're interested in particular area, like for example, where you live or downtown or someplace, we can zoom in and see what we are trying to do. There's only been incremental changes proposal based on what is already happening. And this is all kind of done for the purpose of the scenario of the growth for the coming 30 years. By 2050, according to Maricopa Association of Governments socioeconomic projection, there would be probably another 82,000 additional people. It could be a few thousand less, it could be a few thousand more, but all those people need to kind of be accommodated in the growth. And typically, if you think about a household, a typical size is maybe 2.2. So maybe you're talking about 35, 36,000 different housing units that will continue to increase in Tempe. So how to manage them, how to make it streamlined, how to do it in such a way that they are close to transit, they have amenities, they have enough park, and there's enough services, water infrastructure, is the thing that every city does, that general plan. And because of that, a general plan update, the state requires every 10 years. The last one we did was in 2013-14, and we're doing it now. So that's the idea. But Jacob can definitely enlarge any part if you want to see it, or we can go to one of the scenarios and show you the enlarged portion of maybe the northern part, which is more busy.
We do have another question, but before we get to that, if you'll see these black lines on the map, those are any place where you see kind of like a dark bolded black line, that's where the proposed changes are. And with that, Rob Moore asks, how was it decided where to expand the cultural resource areas for 2050? Good question. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. I'll talk to that for a little bit, and then maybe if Ambika or Ryan wants to say something. But this area where my mouse is circling was identified to be additional cultural resource. The reasoning for that was in combining the land use and residential density maps, that neighborhood had a higher density than most single family neighborhoods typically do. And the combination put it in a multifamily category, and being conscious of the fact that it is an older neighborhood and it is surrounded by cultural resource, we felt it more appropriate to designate it that way than to give it a multifamily designation. I hope that answers your question, Rob.
It may be my bad eyes, but I'm not sure if others saw where your mouse was moving. Could we zoom in a little?
Sure.
Also, thank you for answering that.
Yeah, and this is the area near Mitchell Park. So this is University Drive and Hardy Drive.
And Jacob also talked about a few places we think the existing cultural resources area designation is probably not most appropriate. I see that Mr. Brett Batchelor is online too, if he wants to speak. We can talk to you separately, but we've heard your comments, And there are some areas that we are contemplating that it probably would be more reasonable to have a different designation. But like Jacob said, in some areas where preservation of that particular character is important, like in Maple Ash and a few other areas, which de facto is already kind of low density areas, those cultural resources area help maintain and preserve the overall character of Tempe, because many people come here for that mix of things, the balance of really historic and the low density neighborhoods, and also some high density and more intense areas where it is appropriate with transit. So that's been a balancing act.
Okay, we have a couple of questions that came in. Let's see. Does this map account for potential changes in transit corridors? I'm curious because there has been some talk about changes to transit recently and would like to know how opinion on how that could change the map. That question is from Sean Mahoney.
I can respond to that, and maybe Jacob and Ryan and anyone else can chime in. So this is one topic that comes up to many, many meetings at the community working group meetings, also the technical advisory group meetings and other meetings. And obviously, we are very much aware of some potential areas like the Rio Salado that goes towards Mesa, or maybe rural going south, where some transit opportunities are being contemplated. So what happens is we are making room for that. And there are circulation chapter here where transit, travelways, pedestrian, and bikeways are also considered in different elements. And so the land use map and the circulation map actually very much are compatible and consistent. They jive with one another. Wherever there's more density, there is a transit. And wherever there's like a corridor, like in rural, people have asked to consider bus rapid transit with dedicated lanes to facilitate the flow of people and goods. And as we have since the last 2014 general plan, we do have the streetcar right now, and then there are possibilities of expanding all of those. So yes, they have been very well thought about, and the land use, residential density, and intensity maps and the transit future are very much compatible in the map. What happens is we do not go into really specificity of the transportation corridors at this one. We only go into a high level vision and like the respiratory type of objectives and goals. And after this plan is hopefully adopted, the city prepares what is called the transportation master plan. That is a time that goes into a lot more detail on the basis of what people have told us and how they would like their city to grow and where the growth have to occur. So all of them then gets expanded and go into a lot more detail in the transportation master plan.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, we have a question from Summer. Is there a way to get, Summer Baker, is there a way to get these maps in high resolutions? The link Brenda shared only zooms into a certain point and not the same quality as you are showing. That's a good question. We will put up a liquid file link or an actual PDF on the tempe.gov/2050. I also just shared a link, since it is a bigger size PDF there, for you all to download. And I believe on the link I shared originally, you can save as a PDF that will allow you to kind of zoom in and have some more access. But thank you for asking that. Okay. And Sean, did that answer your question, or did you have a follow-up? Oh, you did. You said yes. That's a good explanation. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Let's see. Summer asks, and also I must have missed it, but who gets to determine which plan is approved?
Okay,
So
so
go ahead,
yeah,
go ahead, Ambika.
Yeah, so you get to actually determine that. So we're showing different scenarios because we know that at minimum, we need to accommodate a number of people. We also think of the future, how the trends are taking place, more bikes, less car, more transit, and people want shade, people want certain type of density and walkability. So all of those things professionally we provide what will help. And we are providing you different options to accommodate all of those things on different scenarios. So we'd very much like to hear from you. We've been showing these maps in the community working group, technical advisory groups, and other meetings too. Now they're being a little more formative. Tell us what you think, and especially that survey that is out where you can really expand and then zoom and look at the map more carefully. There are various questions where you can actually put the options, and there are also a few other things where you can put your priorities. And anything that we've done so far is based on what we've heard. So it's community-driven process, and obviously professionally we try to do how that particular thing goal or the aspiration is achieved through the plan. So it's yours. So tell us, go to the survey, write to us, talk to us, and this is how we are going to make changes. And among the three, there could be a permutation and combination of those three. Pick some areas from here, pick some areas from there. So for example, 2 is more or less medium. And so you can take a look at it and then tell us, and based on that, we'll make all the changes.
Thank you. Summer also asks, is there a mailer that is going out to let residents know some residents aren't subscribed to the newsletter or go to the work meetings? I can actually help out with that question. We've sent out postcards for all of our several meetings that we've had. This round, we relied on digital and social, just because it's so close to coming up to our draft release for the draft plan that's coming up. And the draft plan that's coming up next month, we'll send out a postcard to every single household in Tempe. So I don't know if Ambika or Jacob, if you want to expand upon that, but that's it in a nutshell.
Yes, Brenda, thank you very much for that. We've been very much aware of reaching out to people from many, many different means: social media, mailers, the water mailer, and postcards, and emails, and anything. So if we start from the beginning, when we have the public involvement plan adopted last year in March, that's when we started actually sending out the postcards. And then we've done that at least 2 or 3 times. So almost everyone should have received it. We do get a few mailers back, but then there are many, many different mechanisms that we use to make sure that we reach out to people. And then we also tell people that please tell anyone else that you know, your neighbors and your co-workers and your friends and your family, that they're most welcome to contact us or come to any of the meetings or go to the website and let us know how to do it. So that's been our effort. There have been mailers to everyone, all the property owners.
And we can share public input summaries. Actually, public input summaries are on the website at tempe.gov/2050, which lists all of the efforts and groups that they were sent out to. Summer, maybe you and I can touch base separately just to make sure that you're on the mailing list. Basically, everyone in the city is supposed to have received some type of correspondence by now. So we'll want to make sure that we're good in that area with you. So let me put my email address in the chat.
Yeah, if we are guilty of anything, we over communicate.
Yeah.
So, still, if people haven't heard, let us know.
At some points, it does feel like it's a lot, but definitely want to double check to make sure we're catching everyone. Okay, these are excellent questions. Let's see, do we have any more? Okay, let me put my email address for everyone as well. Hold on just a moment. Okay, there on the screen. Okay, well, hearing no other further questions, we can go ahead and begin to wrap up the meeting. We want to remind you that the survey will be open until April 9th. So please hop on and share with your friends, neighbors. We'll have the recording of this meeting and the one that we held earlier at noon that will be posted on the website tomorrow morning, as well as the larger PDF of that document that I shared with you all in the liquid file. Thank you so much for attending and making time for tonight's public meeting. We look forward to hearing your feedback, and if you'd like any further clarification, we're happy to hop on a call and or just hop on a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever we can do to kind of answer some more questions. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.